Welcome to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show, and thank you for being with us. Our topic, leadership, focuses on leaders such as yourselves. We believe that leadership is a skill that can be learned through practice and awareness. It is our hope that our conversation will help you become more reflective when it comes to your own leadership practices and enable you to leave a positive legacy. Our very special guest is Don Williams. Don is the CEO of Don Williams Global and 3 times #1 best-selling author. Don speaks internationally on the wow experience or how to far exceed customers' expectations. Don has worked with over 1/2 of the Fortune 500 on marketing, sales, customer experience, cultural, and leadership strategies. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Biana.
Don, I am very excited to have you on my show. You are the CEO of Don Williams Global. You're also an entrepreneur for 30 plus something years. An author, you have 3 books out. And I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your company and about what you do. Your specialty is sales. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Happy to do that. And thank you, Biana, for having me on the show. I'm honored and humbled to have a chance to participate. So Don Williams Global is a company that helps other companies deliver wow experiences to prospects, customers, their team, and ultimately you have to start with yourself. We're a company that we believe that on a scale of 1 to 10, you should demand wow. And wow starts at 11 and goes on to infinity. But when you hear your customers say wow, you know that you're delivering the right level of customer experience. And when you hear your team say wow, you know that you're delivering the right kind of culture in your company. And so we help entrepreneurs and corporations deliver wow through prospects, customers, team, and themselves all around the globe.
That's very exciting. So how do you get to that wow? And, we all have a different measurements for what wow is. So how do you know that you actually have reached that point that is really a wow point for your clients or customers?
That's a very valid and smart point that everyone determines wow in a different manner. It's a different bar you have to get over to deliver that wow. So the first step in delivering wow is to decide that on that scale of 1 to 10, you're going to demand wow. And the only way to know if you have delivered wow, you have to ask the other person, how was it for you? And then literally in our company, we want to hear the word wow.
So I assume to be able to ask, you have to have a high level of emotional intelligence to know about yourself and what you're trying to achieve.
So in business, so many times we have our IQ, our intelligence quotient, dialed all the way in, and we have the brightest, most educated people working on a project, and we certainly need to do that. But the reality is that will give us incremental increases in sales and customer satisfaction and satisfaction of working for a company. But where the real magic happens is when your emotional quotient, your EQ, is dialed all the way in. And the first step there is that you have to be sure that if you're the leader of the company, if you're the leader of the organization, you have to be certain that your EQ is hitting on all 8 cylinders and is revved up, because if you are not full, you cannot fill others.
And for the folks that don't know where even to start to fill themselves up, what suggestions you have?
I'm glad you asked. So I'm a big believer in, if you want to get your EQ humming as good as it can, is you start with gratitude. Let me share something we do in our own company. So a couple of years ago, I was invited to speak at a conference in Bangkok, Thailand. Met this really smart lady there, electrical engineer by trade. Now she's a brilliant coach, Gina Molakonlong. And she shared that our bodies are governed by electrical impulses, 80% of which of those impulses originate in the brain and are sent to your finger, your lungs, wherever, and then 20% of the traffic back. And that's true throughout your entire body, except the relationship between the heart and the brain. And the relationship between the heart and the brain is about 80% of the electrical impulse traffic originates in the heart and is sent to the brain. So totally different than the rest of your body. The other thing she shared was this: biorhythmically, you are at your optimum mentally and physically when you experience or express gratitude. So when I listened to Gina talk with me about this, I knew that I needed to personally work on my own gratitude. And so when I got back to the States, I went to a hardware store and I bought a galvanized silver pail radio. And for about 6 months, I carried this silver pail radio every day. And inside, I had a piece of paper that said gratitude. And it was my intentional reminder to experience more gratitude. Well, the one thing about practicing gratitude is the more you practice gratitude, the more grateful you become. And after about 6 months, I decided that with one of my companies, which is in the call center business, with that leadership team, we would start practicing gratitude. And so every Monday morning, those 9 people get together for about 10 or 15 minutes, and everyone shares one occurrence from their life in the previous week. And it can be business, family, or personal, where they're grateful. And it's typically something like, my 9-year-old daughter plays soccer. I went to her first 3 games, and Saturday was her 4th game, and she introduced me to her new friends. Something that does not seem large to others, but made a huge impact on the individual person. And one week, I'd been traveling that week, and I knew that a lady who had worked with me 15 or 20 years, I knew she had been out from looking at reports. And I knew her daughter had been pregnant. What I did not know was that the doctor had told her, due to a congenital defect, the baby would probably not survive to full term. And if the baby did survive to full term, would probably be stillborn. If the baby was not stillborn, the baby would pass away almost immediately. So absolutely tragic. Nothing you can say about that. When it came time for her to share that week, she stood up and said, my grandson was born last week, and he lived an hour. And I'm grateful because mother, father, both sets of grandparents got to hug the baby and tell them how much they loved him. And so I thought I was teaching my team how to practice gratitude, but as what happens so often is the teacher learns more than the student. And so that taught me that it takes a different level of gratitude to see the positive and negative situations. And leaders who practice gratitude will see a change in their life, and then the change in their life will stimulate changes in other people's lives. Because one thing we know is that if you really want to make change in other people, model the change. All of the preaching and direction is nearly worthless. What they see in your life is much more effective.
You know, it's a very tragic story, but very also interesting, because what you're saying to us, model the change even when you're experiencing setbacks.
I think that's absolutely true. And when you go through your life, and whether it's business, family, or personal, at this stage in my life, I've come to realize that I either win or I learn, and learning is in fact a little different form of winning. And so the next step after gratitude that I think is very important is to realize the boundaries of your comfort zone and confront comfort zone physics. If we imagine a great big circle, we say that's all the experiences in the universe, and then a much smaller circle, and maybe even pinpoint, that is the experiences with which I'm comfortable. And so comfort zone physics works like this. If you will step out of that pinpoint circle, even an inch, what you will find is your comfort zone expands. And then if you continue to step out of that comfort zone continues to expand. So many times in business, entrepreneurs, executives, they attend conferences after conference after conference. They read book after book after book, podcast after podcast after podcast, but yet there's no real change in their life. And the reason for that is because knowledge is great, but without application, it's not worthless, but it becomes trivia. And the biggest reason people don't use application is because they're not comfortable getting out of that comfort zone. But the beauty is this: get out of your comfort zone every day, and what you'll see is that comfort zone will rapidly expand. The timing of its expansion is totally dependent on you. And the first time you exit your comfort zone, you take a little step, but after a while, you start taking great big steps. And so in my own life, I've owned multiple businesses for 30 plus years. But 3 years ago, I decided I was going to write a book. And so I sat down at a keyboard and began to write a book. And as soon as it was done, I knew I wanted to do the second book. So the second book, which the title is Romancing Your Customer, basically explores business from the metaphor of romance, which you do by delivering wow experiences. So when you look at the life cycle of a customer from the romantic metaphor, is that Johnny meets Sally. He thinks she's cute. He's interested in her. He eventually reaches out to her. They have coffee. They go on dates. And sometime later, hopefully, if it's successful, they stand at the altar and say, I do. Well, all of that experience from the first time Johnny glimpsed Sally up to the time they stood at the altar and said, I do, in business, we call that marketing and sales. It's the exact same process. We identify prospects that we're interested in, and then we pursue them assertively, hoping to end up at the altar. And then once Sally said, I do, and Johnny and Sally were married, and once that prospect becomes a customer, they both enter into a different relationship with you. Now it's marriage, and we know that marriage is not the same thing as pre-marriage. Different kind of relationship and requires a little different kind of effort, still maintaining some of that courting and dating that happened in the beginning. And then sometimes as companies, we make mistakes with customers and we have to say, Biana, we were good once and I know I screwed it up. And is there any way we could try again and do better? And then, of course, that's win back. And then I think Herb Kelleher, the founder and first chairman of the board at Southwest Airlines, said it best. I'm not going to worry about taking care of my customers. I'm going to worry about taking care of my team, because my team of 80,000 employees, ticket agents, gate agents, flight attendants, pilots, they interact with my customers. So I'm going to take phenomenal care of my team, and I'm going to expect my team to take phenomenal care of my customers. And that has worked phenomenally well for Southwest Airlines. Return to profit every quarter since inception, highest customer satisfaction scores in the airline industry, non-luxury. And the airline industry is typically full of union and contract strife. And Southwest Airlines, for the most part, has avoided that just because they take care of their customers without their customers forcing them to take care of them.
So it's interesting, he actually recognized the power of frontline workers, people that actually do engage with customers.
Absolutely. So last year, I had the opportunity to speak to the Global Gaming Expo, which was 25,000 casino executives from around the world. And I am a casino customer and have some status. So, when I check in, I skip the main lines and all that stuff. And they truly deliver a phenomenal romantic experience to customers with, what they view as status. But the one point that I brought up in that talk was this. So it's obvious that my host has received extensive customer service training. It's obvious that Diamond and 7-star check-in agent has received extensive customer and human relation training. But it's also obvious that the maid for the room has not. And the problem with that is this. Any person in a company who is forward-facing to a prospect or a customer must also be able to deliver that wow. Because here's kind of how the physics of wow works. I deliver a great experience to you, and it's a wow. I deliver another great experience to you, and it's another wow. But then I drop the ball. I totally mess it up. And so you don't give me wow. You go, ugh, I hated that. He did that so poorly. Well, if I have a whole bunch of wows, you will overlook and give me some forgiveness on that groan situation. But if I only have one or two wows, you may choose to never do business with me again because I dropped the ball. Certainly, if I deliver that horrible experience on the first experience, we're done. You move on. You're like, I can find better. And so any person in a company who is forward-facing to the public needs to have the adequate training, have the adequate motivation to deliver wow every time to every customer. And I'll go back to the very first question you asked me. The challenging thing is this. What is wow to customer 1 may not be enough for customer 17. And so the only way to know is you just have to ask. On a scale of 1 to wow, how'd I do? And if you get 8, 9, 10 wow, I think you're good. I don't think you have to have perfection. But if you get 7 or under, I think number one, you need to address that with that customer. What could I have done better? How can I make that better? And then two, you probably need to go back and analyze your systematic process and see, is there something we should do that's an improvement? So maybe a year ago, I'm flying to the Mideast and we book Emirates. So my wife tells me when I get home, she'd booked the flight, and she said, now included in the ticket price, they're sending a driver to the house to pick us and the luggage up. I never flown Emirates before. I've flown them several times since. But I was like, oh, you got that wrong. They're not doing that. But in fact, they did. And I said, wow, I'm impressed. And so when the driver showed up, he was in a big black Escalade, and he wore a black suit and black tie and a white shirt. And he handled us and the luggage, with grace. We get to the airport. He checks the luggage in. We onboard onto the plane. And before I even sit down, the flight attendant addresses me by name, says, Mr. Williams, would you like to see a wine list? And kind of flippantly, I reply to her, well, if you have a wine list, sure, I'd like to see it, because I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, so I fly American all the time. And the wine list at American is 2 reds, 2 whites, and we're maybe out of one of each. But the Emirates flight attendant, she does, in fact, have a wine list. And I tell her I'll have the 2004 Bordeaux. And so we sit down, get settled in. The flight attendant comes by and tells us when they're going to feed us a 16-hour flight to Dubai. And they're going to feed us fine dining, in an airplane at 36,000 feet. And she tells us, now here's when we're scheduled to feed you, but if you'd like it before or later, just let us know because we cooked to order. And I say, wow. And halfway across the Atlantic, they're shutting the cabin lights down. Everyone is going to sleep. And the flight attendant comes by and says, would you like a mattress? I'm like, oh, if you have a mattress, sure, I'd like one. And she brings a 3-inch memory foam mattress equipped with 800 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets. And I'm like, wow. And then, of course, when we get to Dubai and we deplane, they have an attendant who basically has a Disney World fast pass, and we skip by everybody in line in customs and take the fast track. And then, of course, there's a driver there in a Mercedes, and he picks us up and lovingly delivers us to our hotel. And so that's a really good example of every touch point. A pretty discerning customer, me, said, wow, I'm impressed. And because of that, they've won half a dozen other trips to Asia and to the Mideast. And the same principles will work in any of your businesses. You don't necessarily have to provide a luxury product. You have to provide a luxury feel to the product, service, or experience that you offer.
So in your experience, there is no overdoing it? Were they trying to overvalue?
Certainly in the metaphor of romance, a person can overdo it. And I think in business, when someone slides their hard-earned dollars or their credit card across the counter, they expect a lot. And they certainly expect more value than the dollars they are exchanging with you provide to them. So it's really easy to make sales of a product, service, or experience when the value, and I'll just pull numbers out of the air, when the value is $1,000 and you only require $500 in payment. Much more challenging to make sales where the value is $1,000 and the price is $1,000. Because if people are not, quote unquote, making a profit, it's a challenge. And so you almost have to over-deliver as your standard delivery practice. Now, on the sales cycle, there is no doubt that you can over-deliver. So many times in selling, companies, teams, and individuals give, and then wonder why they're not winning sales. Because in that stage of the relationship, it must be give and take for there to be equity. And so when you look at it from the marketing and sales side, I think you can over-deliver, and you must realize that that relationship must be give and take for there to be equity and equality.
So how do you train your customers to actually start purchasing your services?
Probably the step one is always this: start with you. Step two is go to the team. And step three is go to the customers. Because the reality is this: we get tons of coaching clients that come in and say, I cannot make people buy from me. I'm like, yeah, no, you cannot. Current thought on leadership is I can only lead through influence. The best leaders in business are the Richard Bransons, the Warren Buffetts, the people who say this: I'm going to hire the smartest people I can hire. I'm going to cast the vision for the company. I'm going to set the values for the company. I'm going to determine our mission. And then I'm going to empower those people. I'm going to support them as they set about to tackle their initiatives. And so when you run a company like that with transformational leadership, where instead of being top-down command, it's bottom-up, I'm here to support you. What you'll find is those brilliant people you hired and you took the handcuffs off of their creativity and their ability, is that they will accomplish amazing things. And the customers will follow along because they're taking their lead from the stimulation of the company.
And for more junior salespeople that they don't have that level of influence, what advice would you give them?
So just put it in the context of a brand new salesperson. I would suggest that, number one, look at the selling profession as a learning profession. And that, I think Zig Ziglar said this first, so I'll give him credit. People are born baby boys and baby girls. Nobody is born a great salesman. But somewhere along the line, they learn how to do that. And then the very first step that I would suggest as a place they jump off into their learning would be a book Dale Carnegie wrote, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And to me, it is Human Relations 101. And even if you listen, and I encourage you to, people like Brene Brown, the clinical psychologist out of the University of Houston, when you listen to Brene's teaching, a lot of it is built on concepts that Dale Carnegie brought about, and she's just taken it further. But those were the building blocks. So I'd recommend that book. And then the other thing is, I'm a big believer in attitude, and you hear that in selling, and you see people who light their hair on fire and run around and jump up and down. And I don't think that's the kind of attitude I'm talking about. Attitude is in perspective, and how do I look at things? And you want to be sure that you look at things from a positive point of view, and gratitude will help with that. And the other thing on perspective is you want to be sure that you look at things from the other person's point of view, from an empathetic point of view, because truly in sales and in business, my point of view is almost irrelevant. I need the point of view of my team, my customers, and my prospects, because my job is to empower them and to deliver wow to them. And I can't do that if I'm looking through my glasses. I have to look through their glasses.
And if you're dealing with a very competitive environment, if you're working in a very high competitive sale environment, what do you do then?
You got to stand out. And here's the easiest way to stand out. So almost all sales environments are produce. And what have you done for me? You know, the old saying used to be, what have you done for me lately? In today's world, it's more of, what have you done for me now? You know, our biggest competitors, I don't care what your industry is, I can tell you who your biggest competitor is even without knowing your industry. Your competitor's not in your industry. Your competitor is this little company called Google and the other little company called Amazon. When you as a consumer sit down to Google something, you ask Google a question, Google gives you 22 million answers in 0.21 seconds. And so we thought people liked instant gratification. Google and Amazon take that to a whole new level. And so what happens with society is that accelerates our need and desire for instant gratification. And that really is our biggest competitor, is how do we look at our product, service, or experience, and how do we instantly gratify customers to the level of gratification that they want? The easiest way is this: don't try to be someone else. Don't copy. Don't emulate. Don't follow somebody else. The world will love the real you and have very little time for the false you. I think everybody, individuals and companies, have two personas. One, the persona that's backstage, that does all the work, the person you really are, the person with insecurities and questions and doubts, etc. And then they have the persona who's out in front of the curtain, the person that we all want everyone to think that we are. The quicker that you can get the backstage person to poke its head through the curtain and step through, the better off you are, because the world will love the person behind the curtain when they step out on the stage, and the other person will go poof, they'll vanish. And companies are the exact same way. The companies that have the highest customer satisfaction, the highest net promoter, the companies that get a lot of wow are totally transparent with their customers. There's nothing left to chance.
And do you believe that everyone could be a great salesperson?
So if you look at Myers-Briggs, which, basically takes the 2 basic personality types to 4 to 8 to 16, I think that you find great salespeople in all of the 16 tertiary divisions of Myers-Briggs. Now, there are certainly some people who are naturally wired to be more assertive, more aggressive, more vocal. But in my own life, so my Myers-Briggs is I am an INTJ. And when I tell people that, they say, I as an introvert, you speak on huge stages, you do podcasts and trainings and coaching and facilitation. I'm like, I do, but it's not because I'm an introvert. It's in spite of that. So yes, I think everyone can improve. Can everyone achieve the same level of mastery? Probably not.
Any final thoughts?
I just say this. I'm so grateful to have met you through the magic of social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I'm outside of Fort Worth, Texas. And then for us to have a strong enough connection to spend this quality time today, I'm grateful for all of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Don. And how can people contact you, buy your books? I know they're available on Amazon.
They are on Amazon, and you can always reach me at donwilliamsglobal.com. And my personal email is don@donwilliamsglobal.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Don, for being a guest.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. And if I can help you or any of your listeners, please let me know.
Thank you. Our special guest was Don Williams, the CEO of Don Williams Global. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show. Remember that you're all leaders in your own rights, and the impact that you're meant to achieve starts with small acts of kindness, curiosity, and generosity. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and until next time.